Hey everybody, Charles here. Welcome to Backroads Living. We appreciate each and every one of you who've stopped by. Don't forget we do have a new channel over on Locals. The link to the channel is in the description box below. If you'd like to hop over there and join us, we'd appreciate it. If you can support us on that channel or this channel, we appreciate all the support that we get. I can assure you it's all used in a way that's very responsible. We don't waste anything here unnecessarily. But in today's video, I wanted to talk to you about drought and famines. Are we getting ready to come into a type of famine in the United States? Well, it's very possible. Anything can happen. And I wanted to look at some of the things that's been going on here in the United States, and we may touch on things that's happened in foreign countries, but basically what's going on here in the States. Now, I'm sure that many of you live in some of these areas, and you may know a little more about this than I do. And if you do, please leave your thoughts in the comments section below, and let us know what's going on in your neck of the woods. Let us know what's going on with your local governments and how things are being handled in your states. We appreciate all your comments, and if you can share our videos, please do. We appreciate that. Don't forget to like the video. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do. That helps us immensely. And if you'll hit that bell icon when you subscribe to be notified when we upload new videos. So thank you all again for doing that. We appreciate it, and thank you in advance. But in this video today, we want to talk about how the drought causes milk production to fall and cattle farming to decrease, how that it causes crops to fail or produce in a way below the expected or needed amount of produce. Because those of you who have raised gardens can understand how that a dry season affects your produce in your regular garden. Well, we have people in California and some of these larger states that grow thousands of acres of produce, and when we have drought, it affects that tremendously. And California and some of these larger states out here produce mass amounts of vegetables and fruits for the United States, for the entire United States. We get a tremendous amount of stuff from these people and these farmers out there. So it's very concerning when we have these kind of droughts come about. But one of the things I did want to mention here too is that before we get into the drought so much about the produce, is that the U.S. is losing farms, literally losing farms by the thousands yearly. Right here it says droughts affect our ability to water our crops, whether in the gardens or the farm field. According to Farm Progress, the U.S. has lost 4,000 farms in 2020 alone. 4,000 farms in 2020 alone. Average family farm size has remained more or less stable, but big agricultural farms have grown noticeably. Big ag tends to be hard on both animals and the environment. However, the U.S. has lost dairy farms. Think about this, dairy farms at a shocking rate. So let's look at these pictures right here that I've printed and downloaded for you, the dairy farms. In this first one, it says here that milk production report also showed the largest year-over-year decline in the number of licensed dairy operations since 2004, and the largest year-over-year percentage decline since 2003, the first year for which the data is available. There were 3,281 fewer licensed dairy operations in 2019 than in 2018. Think about that, over 3,000. When the number dropped by 2,731, the overall number of licensed operations in the U.S. has marched steadily downward since data collection began, declining by more than 50%. That's amazing. Declined more than 50% from 70,000 in 2003 to 34,000 in 2019. Now this next graphic here, this next photo, I'm not going to read all that. You can read it. You can pause the video and read it. But I did want to read this section here that says the slow decline in the right bottom corner. If the current pace of consolidation continues within the next decade, we will have fewer than 15,000 dairy farms in the United States. Now that could affect us immensely as far as the cost of milk cheese, anything that's made from milk, the price could rise significantly, make it much, much tougher to have those things. Now, the next thing that we want to talk about is drought. And let's look over this drought chart right here real quick. Before we get into it, I want to show you what's going on with this. Now, in this chart, you'll see that this was released July the 29th, 2021. It's a very updated chart. And the western part of the United States, the entire western coast, along with the upper Midwest, is either under severe drought, extreme drought, or exceptional drought. Lots of stuff going on here that's going to affect lots of things, and a lot of things that we eat or that we consume as consumers. So these things are important that we understand that this could create famines in our country right here in the United States that we live in. There's just so much happening that we're not seeing, that the news is not reporting, that the only way you're ever going to find it is to research and find this stuff. Drought is causing farmers to walk away from their farms because they can't produce things without water. California, a state deep in extreme drought conditions, is the largest dairy producing state in the Union. California is also the nation's top producer of vegetables, berries, and nuts, according to a piece published by Reuters. In anticipation of even further lack of water, farmers all across the state have left their fields unplanted. Now think about that. They're one of the largest producers of vegetables, berries, and nuts, and many of the farmers have not even planted their crops this year. Others chose to plant drought-tolerant crops or turn to other forms of income. They're walking away from their farms. And animals, like people and crops, need water every single day. They've got to have it just like everything else. Farmers in Utah are currently dealing with 75% less water than they had last year. Many Utah farmers were forced to plant fewer crops, including hay, stable and livestock feeding. Many farmers will have to sell or slaughter their livestock because they can't feed or water them, which dramatically affects future meat prices. Most definitely. In North Dakota, many pastures are simply empty as drought left ranchers with no other choice than to sell their herds off to be slaughtered. Cliff Mason sold more cows in 2 weeks than he had in 6 years. When asked about the other ranchers in the area, Madison had this to say: "There have been 300 and 400 head outfits that have completely sold out. That's all they did all their lives. It was so disheartening they don't even come to the sales." It wasn't just one time. They started with their older cows, then went to their replacement heifers, then went to middle-aged cows, and then last week we saw young cows come to town. It was so hard to talk to them. There's nothing that will make it any better. I don't know what they're going to do. These people have run cattle their entire lives. That's all they've ever done. So many of them are going to be put out of business. What will they do then? That's a good question when there's no water to water the livestock. Another problem with farmland that we're going to run into here in the United States, or already running into, is foreign ownership. Now, we talked about this in a previous video, how that a lot of the agricultural land is being purchased by investors from China and other foreign countries. It's not just China. There's other foreign countries that buy land here in the United States. In 2013, a Chinese firm purchased Smithfield Foods. As part of the 2013 sale, a Chinese company now owns 146,000 acres of prime U.S. farmland through the purchase of that. They also own JBS packing facilities. Nationwide numbers hint at growing global interest in U.S. farmland. It just seems like more and more foreign entities are wanting to purchase farmland here in the United States. By the end of 2019, foreign entities held an interest in nearly 35.2 million acres of U.S. agricultural land. That represents almost 3%. Think about that. Almost 3% of all privately held farmland is now by foreign entities in the United States. They're not only buying up U.S. farmland, non-farmer domestic entrepreneurs or investors also and want a piece of the agricultural pie. It's not just farmers wanting to buy farmland and agricultural land. And when these other people become interested in it, it drives up the price of it. Institutional investors, people like colleges, pension funds, endowments, private foundations, other organizations that manage huge pools of capital. They have tons of money, like Blackstone, that's buying up, millions and millions of dollars worth of housing communities. The farmland is being turned into investment portfolios instead of agricultural land to grow on. These people like this that are buying it, they're not going to be growing potatoes and corn, soy and those kind of things. And that's going to affect the amount of foods that we have available here in the United States. Because even right now, as we are experiencing these severe droughts and we're seeing a lot of just odd weather in the south and southeast, our garden this year didn't do anything like it should have. And we fertilized it and worked it and did everything that we needed to do with it. And our tomatoes the stems are beginning to die back, and our tomatoes have just now begun to ripen. It took forever for our tomatoes to ever come on and to begin to produce. I think that the spring was so long that the soil stayed cold for so long that it just didn't warm up quick enough for our stuff to do like it should. Our corn has done well, and zucchini and squash. The peppers are just now starting to produce decently. It's just not been a good season for growing these things like this. Another thing here says American soil. Let's think about that. American soil. Those are two words that are commonly used to stir up patriotic feelings. We talk about America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, and we're all patriotic about it. But those are also words that can't be taken for granted, because today nearly 30 million acres of U.S. farmland are held by foreign investors. So, American soil, Chinese soil, Netherlands soil, German soil, and I'm not against anybody in foreign nations. Listen, the Chinese people are wonderful people. The German people are wonderful people. It is the elitist in these countries. It's the government of these countries, just like the government of this country is pathetic. They are pathetic. It's just how they are. The number has doubled in the past decades of ownership, foreign ownership, in the past 2 decades has doubled. When the stock market tanked during the past recession, foreign investors began buying up big swaths of U.S. farmland. And because there are no federal restrictions, and I didn't know that until this week, there are no federal restrictions on the amount of land that can be foreign owned. It's been left up to individual states to decide on any litigation on that, or legislation, or any limits on their own states. It's likely that even more American land will end up in foreign hands, especially in states with no restriction on ownership. With the median age of U.S. farmers at 55, many face retirement with no prospect of family members willing to take over. So here we've got many of our farmers nearing the age of retirement. The children don't have any interest in the farms nowadays. If you can't do it on a phone or a computer or something like that, folks don't want to fool with it anymore. They don't want to work farms. They don't want to work cattle ranches. They don't want to work dairy farms or anything like that. So when people retire, what's going to happen to that produce that they produced for all those years? Well, it's just going to disappear. It's just going to disappear. It's going to be gone. Or if they decide to move and sell their farm, the children don't want the farm. They don't want to have to manage it and work it. So they're going to sell it to the highest bidder. And it's going to be somebody like Blackstone that's going to buy it without the intention of farming, or to a foreign investor. So either way, you still lose the produce from that piece of property. And it says the National Young Farmers Coalition anticipates that 2/3 of the nation's farmland will change hands in the next few decades. 2/3 of the farmland. Can you imagine that? 2/3 of the farmland disappearing as far as production of farm goods, whether it be cattle or dairy or vegetables that are grown. 2/3 of it. That's a lot. A lot. Texas is kind of a free-for-all, so they don't have a limit on how much land can be owned. You look at Iowa, and they restrict it. No land in Iowa is owned by foreign entities, which I think is wonderful. I think every state in the union should have a limit as to how much can be owned or restricted altogether. Ohio, like Texas, also has no restriction, and nearly 500,000 acres of prime farmland are held by foreign-owned entities. In the northeastern corner of the state, below Toledo, companies from the Netherlands alone have purchased 64,000 acres for wind farms. Wind farms? Are you serious? What are you going to do with wind farms in below Toledo, Ohio, on 64,000 acres of agricultural land? Makes no sense. There are 2 counties in this region with the highest concentration of foreign-owned farmlands, more than 41,000 acres each. One of those is Paulding County, where 3 wind farms straddle the Ohio-Indiana border. Head of the National Young Farmers Coalition says that this kind of consumption of farmland by foreign entities is starting to cause concern. I would have thought it would have been a concern when it first started. One of the main reasons that we're watching this is because once a foreign entity buys up however many acres they want, Americans might never be able to secure that land again. It may never come back to the United States because foreign entities own property right next to your property. How about that? How about if China had a border right up against your fence down there at your creek or down at your road or wherever it may be? Once we lose this property, we may never get it back, ever. And these people will do with this property what they want to. It'd be just like Tyson Farms and JBL. If the Chinese own it, they can do with it what they want to. They don't have to sell meat to the United States. They don't have to do anything with that and give it back to us. It's theirs. Ship it all to China if they want to. So it is a concern. Every acre of farmland that's purchased up by foreign entities may never come back to us. Then we've got the droughts. We've got the wildfires. And when we have these wildfires like we had out west and in the upper northwest, these kind of fires destroy not just habitats for wildlife and destroy homes, they destroy habitats for pollinators. There's just a lot of stuff going on, folks. Right now is a real good time, I think, for us as Americans and as preppers. I think it's a real good time for you and I to have our pantries stocked and to be ready to start gardening. Now, it's a little late for gardening this year. Yeah, you can still get in some fall crops. There's some things like that you can still get in for the fall. But as far as planting a garden and trying to go corn, tomatoes, peppers, all that kind of stuff, it's a little late for that this year. So my suggestion would be to use your farmers markets to get your fresh produce. Go out there and buy your fresh produce that you want to can up and get your canning done. Get those things put in your pantries and work on your pantry. Work hard on your pantry. Get those shelf-stable foods put back, because we don't know what's going to happen next year. We don't know what's going to happen next month in this country anymore. So with that being said, we appreciate you. Don't forget our locals channel. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to their channel if you haven't already, ring that bell icon to be notified when we upload new videos. And as always, we try to remind everybody that we need to have our house in order, guys. And the best thing that you can do about that is to know the Lord Jesus Christ. Beyond that, everything else is just kind of second-handed. But for those of you that don't know the Lord Jesus Christ, I'd pray that you'd find him. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter as far as prepping is concerned. This is something that everybody needs to do. Everybody needs to do it regardless of your religious standing or your faith. Everybody needs to prep. Keep up the good work. Keep supporting one another. Find the other people in your community that are like-minded, that when things go bad, you can depend on them. And until the next time, we'll see you in the next video.